Right. Okay. I think let's kick it off. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. This session, our speakers are going to be covering the latest 23 AI features for Oracle, as well as OCI's full stack disaster recovery and how you can really simplify your database management. So my name's Erin, and I'm joined today by our speakers. So we've got Ed Mace from Xynomix. We have John Nangle from Oracle, and we have Jan Klinke from Dbvisit. All right, so today's agenda, John is going to kick it off by delving into the Oracle database roadmap, as well as 23 AI features. And then Jan is going to cover, full stack disaster recovery, what it does, what you can achieve with it, and how you can use it with Dbvisit software for your critical Oracle SE databases. And then lastly, Ed Mace is going to be covering disaster recovery as a service and how you can ensure business continuity. And then we will finish it off with Q&A at the end. So just really quickly before we start, this webinar is being recorded and it will be provided to you after the session, as well as the presentation slides. And if you do have any questions for any of our speakers, please leave them in the Q&A and they will answer them at the end. All right, thank you so much, guys, for joining today. Over to you, John. I'll let you share your screen.
Excellent. Right, so as Erin said, my name is John Nangle. I've been with Oracle for the last 35 years, and all of that time has been spent on the database side of things. And today we're going to look at Oracle Database 23 AI. 23 AI is the latest long-term release of the database. When you're running production systems, you really ought to be on the long-term releases. So at the moment, hopefully a lot of you are on 19C. That's the current long-term release. 23 AI will be available shortly on-premise to all customers, and that's the next long-term release of the database. We do also have interim releases, innovation releases we call them, things like 18 and 21, which introduce new features, but you shouldn't be going production on those. So stick with the latest versions of the database for the ones that you're going to be going production on. The idea of 23 AI is really to win back the hearts and minds of some of the developers who may have deserted Oracle over the years, thinking that we're a bit old and legacy. And what we're trying to do is reassure people that we're introducing a lot of new functionality into the database, and we're trying to make modern application development and analytics easy to develop and run in Oracle. And there's really no need for a lot of the third-party databases that you may be deploying things on for documents and stuff like that, because all of that can be stored in the Oracle database. And really, we've got this idea of a converged database that we want to promote. And the converged database idea really is that we support all modern data types. So whether it's the standard relational structures or spatial, graph, XML, JSON, or in the latest release of the database, vectors, AI vectors, and we can store all of the different data types in a single Oracle database with all of the benefits that Oracle gives you in terms of high availability and security that you don't get with a lot of third-party databases, or it's not as good. And we support all development types, development styles. So if you want to use microservices, you can do that with Oracle. If you want to use more modern programming languages like Python, then all of that is supported. And we even have things like JavaScript stored procedures in the database with the latest version. And we support any type of workload. So historically, obviously, we've been very good at transactional systems, and then we moved into data warehousing, but we really support any type of workload, any type of data, and all development styles in a single converged database. And it's really a question of not adding more databases, it's adding extensions to the SQL language and more SQL statements rather than more databases to support the needs of any modern application. And if you want to run it on premise, you can do, obviously. If you want to run it in the cloud, then we have our autonomous database, which is the easiest, quickest way to set up a new Oracle database in the cloud. And it's a fully managed cloud service running on Exadata underneath the covers. So the converged database is where we're at. And what we're trying to do is to unify JSON, graph and relational, and AI into the single Oracle database. So the first area that we're going to look at is JSON. And we've got a lot of new functionality in 23AI to support JSON. And the big new idea really is the idea of a JSON relational duality view. And that basically allows you to store your data in relational tables underneath the covers. So you're still storing the data in a normalized form, but on top of the relational tables, you can then create what are called duality views.
Sorry to interrupt, John. Are you meant to be sharing your screen right now?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh,
Is it
sorry
not?
about that. It's not sharing at the moment.
Ah, that's interesting. I'll come out and go back in again.
No
Let's try.
problem.
Right. So can you see it now?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, the first initial bit, it didn't seem like you needed slides, but it's just when you started talking about the tables that I realized. Thank you.
Yep, sorry about that. That's a human error on my side. So here we've got an idea of data being stored in relational tables underneath the covers, and then you can create a duality view on top of that data. Now, you can still use normal get commands and put commands, so you can still retrieve the information that's stored relationally underneath the covers as JSON documents. So you can modify those documents in your applications, and then when you put the document back into the database, it will automatically handle the updating of the underlying tables if you've changed anything. Now, the good thing about that is that you're just storing data once rather than hundreds or thousands of times. So if we had many different students doing the same courses in the same rooms, then the schedule for Jill, which we've got on the right-hand side in a JSON document, might be exactly the same as a schedule for her friend Jack, who's doing the same courses. The only difference would be the name in the name part at the top. All the other information to do with rooms and times and courses might be identical. Now, if we're storing things as JSON documents, all of that information is going to be repeated. And then if we want to change the time of a particular lesson, we'd have to change it in multiple different documents. Whereas with the idea of JSON relational duality views, the information is stored relationally underneath the covers. So all of the data about the times and the teachers and the students is stored in the relevant tables. If we change the time from 1400 to 1500, we're only changing it in one table, but it's still reflected in all of the documents that are referencing that table via the views. So underneath the covers, it's storing information much more efficiently, and we don't get duplication of data in the database. So it's a very efficient way of doing things. And the other good thing about it is that we can have one set of tables supporting multiple different JSON documents. So we could have JSON documents that look at the student schedule, the teacher schedule, the course schedule or course curriculum. And that's all stored in the same set of tables underneath the covers. And if we need to change anything, as I said before, you can define the view so that it will allow you to do updates to the underlying tables. And then when you put documents back into the database, it will automatically change those documents underneath the covers. So it's a very efficient way of storing information, but it still allows JSON developers to do things in the way they would normally do. And if you are moving from things like MongoDB, for instance, then we have a MongoDB API, which allows you to move Mongo applications to Oracle very easily. You can move the data into the Oracle database, and you can still use the same APIs that you're used to using, or you can use things like ORDS, Oracle REST data services, etc. So there's a number of different ways. And of course, if you want to, you can access all the data relationally. So you have a choice of relational or JSON access to the data underneath the covers. The next thing that we've enhanced is the property graph functionality in the database. So again, a lot of data can be represented as graphs. In this particular example, we have vertices, which are the round circles representing bank accounts, and we have edges, which are the bank transfers for money going from one account to another. And one of the things that we can do for money laundering, for instance, is we can say, okay, how is data being transferred from bank account B to E? It might not be going directly. It might be going via a number of different accounts to try and disguise what you're really doing underneath the covers. So in order to look at stuff in a graphical way using property graphs and property graph query language, we can create property graphs on top of the relational data again. So we specify which tables relate to the vertices, those round circles on the previous page, and which relate to the edges, the lines joining the circles. And so we can create a property graph easily, and then we can write queries using property graph query language to traverse that graph much more simply than if you had to do it relationally. So in this particular example, we're looking for transfers from bank account B to bank account E, and we're looking for 3 hops between the two accounts. And if we wanted to do that relationally, it would be pages of SQL, and it would require 12 joins and 3 unions. And if we wanted to increase the number of hops from 3 to 4, then we can easily do that using this particular query by changing the 1,3 to 1,4. But that would add another union and more joins to the query. So it becomes more and more complicated if you want to do it relationally. But it's very, very simple using property graph query language. So they're some of the things that we've introduced on the apps development side of things. We also have things like a Boolean data type at last. We have JavaScript stored procedures in the database, which is, if you want to develop things in JavaScript, having it in the database reduces the round trips from the client to the server, etc. So no context switching. We have wide tables with up to 4,096 columns if you want to do machine learning type applications and you need a lot of measures. And we have lock-free column reservations. So if you had tables or rows that are very hot in a table because you're constantly updating rows, reserving them and reducing values such as hotel reservations or bank account decrements, etc., then you can have lock-free column reservations where you're saying that you're not going to take out a lock to do that update in the same way that you used to do. And that can dramatically increase concurrency, but use it with care. As far as AI is concerned, we've had machine learning algorithms in the database for many, many years, things like forest and trees and naive Bayes and clustering. But what we've introduced in 23AI is vectors. And when you load pictures or documents into the database, you can encode those documents and create a vector associated with the documents. Now, the vector is used to hold the semantic information about the documents. So you can do searches like which pictures look like a particular input picture, or which documents match a document that you're comparing against semantically rather than the actual words that are in the document. And to support that, we have a new vector data type. We have new SQL syntax, so you can do proximity searches in the database to find related vectors that look similar to the one that you're retrieving against. And we can create indexes that are either in memory if you've got enough space in your memory and you haven't got that many vectors in the database, or you can do on disk indexes to improve the proximity searching as well. So all of that functionality is new to 23AI. And other things that have come in from an application perspective, we can prioritize transactions. So if an important transaction is being blocked by an unimportant transaction and someone's holding a lock and they've gone off to lunch, we can automatically kill the less important transaction. We also have an idea of this thing called True Cache, which is a diskless Oracle database instance that sits in front of the main database and is populated automatically and kept in sync with the database. And you can use that as a front-end cache for your application. We've enhanced sharding, so you can have different portions of a database held. You can split a database up into different chunks, which are essentially different databases in their own right. And we can use sharding to coordinate everything, but we can also have raft replication, so you can have a primary copy of data and secondary copies held in other shards as well. And that's all done very efficiently underneath the covers. And we've enhanced data guard so that you can now do data guard essentially at pluggable database level, because 23AI requires you to be in container databases with pluggable databases within those containers. And if you've got a container containing multiple pluggable databases, you can data guard in either direction. So one site could have pluggable databases A and B that are production, and the other site would have the standby copies of those pluggable databases. And then pluggable database C might be production on the second site, data guarding in the other direction. And you can do that using active data guard as well. For security enhancements, we've got a firewall built into the database. So we've got SQL Firewall, which you can turn on a capture. So you can run your application, you can turn on the capture process. It will capture all of the SQL statements that would normally run when you're executing the application. Then you can generate an allow list and enable that allow list so that you're only going to allow statements that you know you want to run against the database. And if anyone tries to execute another statement, it will be blocked, saying that you violated the firewall. Other things from a security enhancements, we've got read-only users. So you can have people who can log in, they can read data, but they can't update. We've got a developer role to give people all of the privileges they'd need to develop new applications in terms of creating procedures and packages and tables, etc. And if we need to, we can grant privileges on an entire schema to users. So we can say grant select any table in the schema to Mary instead of having to grant select on each table individually. So it just makes life a lot simpler from an application development perspective. From a DBA perspective, we can shrink table spaces. In the past, if you had objects that were near the tail end of a data file and you try to shrink that data file, it wouldn't let you do it. Well, now it will move extents underneath the covers so that you can shrink table spaces in a wider variety of applications. We have things like real-time SQL plan management so that it will always give you the best execution plan and use machine learning algorithms underneath the covers to make sure that it's going to give you the best plans. And we've got better support for rolling patching of databases. So if you're in a rack environment, there are many more patches now and upgrades that you can do without having to incur downtime. And all of this is there to increase the manageability and availability enhancements in the database. So that really was a whistle-stop tour through 23AI. There's a lot more detail we could go into, but it's really building on the whole story of the converged database and to give better support for application development and also DBAs when they're using 23AI. So on that note, I will hand over to the next presenter. And if you've got any questions, save them up to the end and we'll answer them at the end of the session.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, John. And over to you, Jan.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Thank you, John. Interesting stuff. So I'll share my screen and you should be able to see my presentation right now.
Yep.
So as John before me, I'm mostly on database side of things. I've been Oracle DBA my whole life. And for Dbvisit company, I've been working for about 6 years. Dbvisit is a company which provides easy management solution for Oracle Database Standard Edition 2, where we enable you to create easily and maintain a standby database, just like Oracle Data Guard does with an Enterprise Edition. And today, I'll try to introduce you the FSDR tool, which is made by Oracle. It's a cloud framework tool, let's say, and it will also enable you to very easily establish disaster recovery for your existing infrastructure, which you have in OCI. So what is the Oracle FSDR, Full Stack Disaster Recovery? FSDR is a response from Oracle towards customers who migrate more and more to the cloud. Migrating to the cloud brings many benefits, better pricing, better license management, better management overall, and so on and so forth. But the only thing, or one of the things which it doesn't take away, is a need of disaster recovery solution. So even when you are on a cloud, you are in a risk of your operations going down when the region where your resources are located in will go down. With Oracle Cloud, it's easy to remedy that. You can easily set up, let's say, mirror components in a remote region. But then the trick is how to actually manage the transition between the two regions, between primary and standby. To help you with that, Oracle created FSDR orchestration tool, which essentially helps you to establish the standby region and to easily migrate your Oracle Cloud resources between these two regions. Now, in many regions, or in some regions, Oracle will have multiple availability domains, meaning like multiple data centers, which will give you the disaster recovery capability as well on its own. You don't really have to go cross-region. But for most regions, Oracle has only one data center. And there, if you really want to set up a proper DR, you need to set up your resources in some remote region. And that's when FSDR comes into play, because it helps you to manage the seamlessly manage the transition of your resources between these two regions. Here I have a summary of the benefits of using FSDR. I would say the biggest benefit is that when you have, let's say, complex infrastructure on Oracle Cloud, and you would like to transition all the resources to remote region, you would probably have to do some checklist or Excel sheet or playbook or scenario to transition everything and do not forget about anything. And those can be really quite complex scenarios when you're migrating or moving, I don't know, tens of virtual machines, storage volumes, and so on and so forth. FSDR will basically bundle everything together automatically because to the FSDR, you're essentially adding your whole cloud infrastructure. So FSDR automatically knows which resources must be migrated to the other region. You can also save some money on FSDR because FSDR is designed to protect your whole stack, so application, database, and storage. And in terms of, or for application stack, you're even able to have so-called moving virtual machines. This means that those virtual machines, and that is possible only for application, will be running only in one region. In the second region, there won't be anything. There will not be any VM. There will be just storage application. So basically, you will be able to have a DR for your application tier, while you will not have any resources at all running on the standby side, except for storage. The challenge for setting up FSDR is that it can be quite complicated. And when it comes to database tier, you are able to include into FSDR only Oracle Database Enterprise Edition with DataGuard. It's not possible to work directly with FSDR and Standard Edition 2. There is basically no interface. So this is the FSDR concept in a nutshell. You see all the tiers separated. There is a little bit different, let's say, method for replicating each tier. So I'll start with database. Database itself is not replicated by FSDR. For replicating the database tier, you need to set up the Oracle Database DataGuard. And then FSDR will be able to interact with this DataGuard. And if necessary, it will perform failover or switchover through the DataGuard. The storage itself is synchronized between regions each 5 minutes. It's automatically done by FSDR. When you're adding your storage to FSDR, you will automatically enable the storage replication, and it gets replicated roughly about each 5 minutes. And this sort or this type of synchronization is, of course, not suitable for Oracle database. That's why they have to be different. When it comes to application tier, you can have moving and non-moving instance. Non-moving instance, I already said that basically there is nothing running on the standby region, and only in case of failover or switchover, Oracle will, let's say, start up the application virtual machines on the standby region. But you can have as well, let's say, active application tier. So you will have active VMs on both sides. That's also possible. But basically, the whole idea is that with FSDR, you're able to failover or switch over your whole application stack to the standby region. And the best part is that it's fully automated. You don't really have to do anything manually. So now, how the FSDR does this? How does it manage the transition? How do you set it up even? So FSDR is accessible through the cloud interface. It's very easy to find it. Once you will start to work with FSDR and set it up, you will notice that there are two main things you need to set up. First thing to set up is so-called groups. Group is a collection of your cloud resources, and you are the one to define which resources belong to which group. The groups exist in peer relation. One of the group is obviously primary. One group is obviously standby, and they are each group is in one region. You yourself will add your cloud resources to each group, and this includes application tier servers, this includes database servers, and also storage. When it comes to database tier, again, you are able to add to this DR group only Enterprise Edition DataGuard databases. It's not possible to directly add the Standard Edition too. So group is, let's say, the first foundation or the first main part of the FSDR. On this slide, I have a demonstration or an example that if you are running Standard Edition only, you will not be able to add the member to the FSDR. It's simply not visible there. It doesn't work. Okay, and now we come to the second most important part of the FSDR, and those are called plans. Plans can be only of two types. It's either failover or switchover. Switchover means graceful reversal of roles between regions. Failover means basically failing over to the standby region in case the primary region is not active. Each plan has steps, which are, some of them are built in, some of them can be defined by you. So you can, I would say, really customize all the plans in details, switchover and failover. What is interesting is that the plans exist only in standby region. So whenever you would need to execute switchover or failover, you will be always going for the standby region, and the region will be pulling, or the standby region will be pulling the resources from the primary region. The plans never run on primary region. So that's interesting conceptual thing. Here's an example how one step in a plan looks like. You can see that each step can include many sub-steps. What is cool is that as you are building the plans, as you are building the DR groups, Oracle FSDR will automatically populate the plan steps. So for example, if you would include a 10 virtual machine in your FSDR group, then when you would generate any plan, there would be automatically pre-checks for all those 10 machines. So you don't really have to worry about like manually adding your machines to the plan. The plans are more or less automatically generated based on the members inside a group, which is really good. And yeah, make things easy. Right, so here I have an example how plan looks like. Here I only wanted to emphasize that the plan is active on the standby group. So you can see, for example, that the standby group has a plan called switchover, which is active and can be used, while the primary has a plan as well, but it's inactive. And just for the record, it's not possible to create a plan on primary FSDR group. You can create the plan only on standby. So if you would like to have a switchover plan on both sides, you would have to first create the switchover plan on standby, then actually perform the switchover, and then create the plan on the primary group. Right, and here's a plan in a bit more detailed view. What I wanted to point out here is that you can have built-in pre-checks, or sorry, yeah, built-in steps, and you can also insert your user-defined steps. And what is cool is that the step itself can be as detailed as running some shell script on a virtual machine, which is part of your DR group. This is something which we actually use with Dbvisit and Standard Edition to be able to integrate our solution with the FSDR. But for this moment, I only wanted to convey the message that the plans are really highly customizable and you can do basically anything. Right, so we come to the FSDR implementation itself. So this is, so what I wanted to convey here is that before you even start using or start thinking about FSDR, you already have to do your homework. So for example, implementing FSDR for your existing application and database tier would for you mean that you would need to already set up some resources in the standby region prior to setting up FSDR. So if you would have Oracle database, you would already have to have set up DataGuard replication, and you would already have to have set up and defined your network and firewall rules on the standby region. And this will be your starting point for actually creating FSDR groups and plans and so on. So it doesn't work in a way that FSDR would do everything for you, not really. You will need to do some prerequisite steps on your own. Right, so here's an example how the FSDR implementation looks like. So first step is to create the DR plans, the DR groups. Next step would be to add your existing members to the DR groups, which will contain all your application, database tier, and also all your volumes. And FSDR will also recognize and is compatible and is interfacing with the DataGuard, which you already set up. The next step would be to establish the volume replication. This replication plays key role in failover or switchover because on those replicated volumes, Oracle FSDR will actually boot the new or the virtual machines which belong to the application tier when you're performing failover or switchover. The next step is to create failover and switchover plans. Those plans would be default, and as I said, FSDR will populate them with automatic steps, let's say, based on existing members. And then the final steps would be to add your user-defined plans, user-defined steps inside those failover and switchover plans. So it's not that complex, but it definitely needs some effort to dedicate to building this whole solution. But once you understand what is really going on, what is happening, what you need to do, then it's really easy. And again, as I said in the first slide, the benefit is that everything will be fully automated when you will perform switchover or failover. Right. Here is just a small example how failover would look like for your standby DR group. So the first step is, of course, that you will lose your primary DR group. The second step would be that the FSDR would perform a built-in pre-checks, whether the volumes were correctly synchronized and whether the VMs can be successfully booted up. The second step is actually the failover itself. In this case, the FSDR will interface directly with DataGuard and will ask DataGuard to perform the failover, which DataGuard will do, and you will have your primary database, or you will have your activated standby database on the standby region. The third step is that the FSDR will fail over the volume groups to the standby region, and those volumes will be then able to be used for booting up all your application tier, which would be the final step, basically, to launch all compute instances. And once everything is done, you have your whole application stack ready for productive use on the standby region. Right. In the last part of the presentation, I want to talk shortly about the Standard Edition 2. As I said in the beginning, FSDR is a cool tool, but it can be used only for Enterprise Edition database tier. But since Dbvisit is dealing a lot with Standard Edition 2, we collaborated with Oracle, and we found a way how to actually use FSDR also with Standard Edition 2 database. The basic idea is that you will replace the DataGuard synchronization on the database tier with Dbvisit. So Dbvisit will be able to do the synchronization between primary and standby database, and will be able to perform the failover and the switchover as well. And that's basically the only change. So you can think about it only as exchanging the DataGuard replication with Dbvisit. But that's only one part of the puzzle, let's say. Second part is more tricky because, as I explained in the beginning, when you're creating your DR groups, you will not be able to add the the Standard Edition to database servers. They won't be visible. So we needed to find a workaround. And the workaround is that you will actually have your database tier completely separated outside the DR groups. So here you can see the primary DR group and the standby DR group, and the database tier is separated from them. But the key is that the one part of the DR group is Dbvisit Control Center Virtual Machine. Control Center is a centralized management component which orchestrates the synchronization between primary and standby database and also orchestrates the failover and switchover. And so what will happen in the event of switchover or failover is that this Control Center VM as a part of the DR group will be migrated to the standby region. And then from within this Control Center VM, we will orchestrate switchover or failover between the database servers. The reason for this is, again, there is no direct interface between FSDR and Standard Edition 2 database. So we have to help ourselves, and we have to use Dbvisit Control Center as the component which will actually provide the interface between FSDR and between the database tier. This is an example how the Control Center looks like. Control Center has a built-in web server which you can use to manage easily your standby databases, whether they are Oracle, SQL Server, or Postgres. We support all three platforms, but of course, for this presentation, the Oracle is the most interesting one. So the control center has not only the web interface, but also includes a command line interface. So when you're running your plans, you're actually able to perform switchover and failover with one simple command. And as an example, I put the exact command you need to run right here. You can see it's really simple one-liner. And the way you use this command is that you will need to create a user-defined step inside failover and switchover plans. And this user-defined step will then ensure that Dbvisit will perform failover or switchover between primary and standby database based on which plan you're actually building. So here I have an example of a plan, switchover plan, which includes standard addition to database tier. All the steps are more or less the same. The steps I want to point out would be the steps which control the switchover of the control center VM. So one of them is here to stop the VM for control center. Second is here to start up the control center. And this step is really important because this step is, again, user-defined. And what it will do is that it will connect to control center and will execute the command for the switchover itself. So instead of FSDR interfacing directly with the data guard, the FSDR will be interfacing with Dbvisit control center through this script. And then the control center will be able to perform the switchover on the database tier, even though the database tier is completely separated from the DR groups. Right, so I think with this last piece of information, my presentation is concluded. Thank you for your attention, and I'll hand over to Erin and the next presenter. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jan. And so lastly, I think it's over to you, Ed.
Thanks, Erin. Right, just loading up now. Just confirm you can see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Erin. So hi, everyone. Morning. My name's Ed. I'm basically one of the sales guys here at Xynomix. I've been with Xynomix now for well over 7 years, but been within the IT industry for well over 20. So gained some kind of decent experience throughout that duration. Essentially, I'm here today to discuss disaster recovery as a service and really how Xynomix can help you through the journey, through everything that obviously has been presented today so far. So just to summarize and recap, obviously what we've been through, there's some phenomenally good, great 23 AI features and functionality to add automation, to add security, to add all sorts of additional bits and pieces into the Oracle database infrastructure. We've also obviously seen the resilience piece for both OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and on-prem. So again, obviously building that level of resilience into organizations to ensure that they've got a disaster recovery plan. We've also seen for both standard edition, so the Dbvisit component, and then DataGuard for Enterprise, the abilities and capabilities they provide, as well as a multitude of additional new features within 23 AI. So the enhanced security, the converged database, the machine learning and AI, the vector search, and as John alluded to, the multi-tenancy with pluggable DBs as well. So ultimately, obviously, there's some exciting new features to come from 23 AI, and obviously to be able to have that disaster recovery capability within your organization. So just to do a quick intro to Xynomix. So we're a database managed services provider. We are the database experts, and of course, we specialize in Oracle database. And I know this isn't here what we're here to discuss today, but we also do Microsoft SQL Server too. So essentially, we have a plethora of skill sets within the database arena for both of those technologies. We've got well over 20 years worth of Oracle database experience, and it's not just accreditations within the Oracle database sector, but it's also the experience those consultants hold and have continuously as well. We have one of the Oracle's certified masters within Xynomix. So our plethora of skills, our expertise in this particular area is something that we can most definitely bring to the table and obviously assist customers with. So I thought I'd share this with you due to the fact that we have some really good satisfied customers that we currently work with. And although this figure is exceptionally high, I wanted to focus more on the fact that essentially with projects that we deliver, although they're on time and satisfied, it's about the continuous reoccurring projects that customers come back to us with. So it's not just about this particular engagement that we're assisting with, but more about the ongoing projects that customers engage, obviously to gain Xynomix assistance and help with. Our customers rate us as excellent, so they are very satisfied, not only with the technical capability, but in addition to that, the customer services that we provide, very professional service and attention to detail that all of our consultants uphold. And then last but not least, our customer retention rate. So we have a phenomenally long-standing, loyal customer base that tend to stick with us. And again, not just for the technical ability, but all the other values that I've emphasized as well in regards to being able to make sure that they are getting a very good customer service from Xynomix essentially. We are Oracle partners, so we are certified and have been now for the last 20 years. We're also part of the OPN, the Oracle Partner Network, which gives us the ability not only to transact things like Oracle Cloud Credit, but it also allows us to build, configure, implement, as well as support, manage and maintain environments both on-prem and in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure too. We're also a Dbvisit partner, and again, have been for a number of years. We are their UK #1 implementation partner. I'm proud of that fact. So not only do we have the capabilities and skills in and around the database tier, but in addition to that, we have a huge amount of experience and skills within the Dbvisit component too. So we can competently, confidently deploy it, implement it, whether it's on-prem or in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which means that you've got a partner that obviously can assist you with that resilience piece too. So how can Xynomix help? We obviously covered 23AI, so we know it's coming on-prem, hopefully in the not too distant future, but it is available in OCI currently, so it can obviously be spun up. So if you were considering potentially to upgrade to 23AI, or for that matter, you're running on 10, 11 or 12, and you're looking to make that transition to 19C or 21, then essentially this is something that Xynomix can actually assist with and help you through that process and journey. Again, John emphasized the fact that there's this multi-tenancy and pluggable databases coming into play. That's obviously quite a big deal, and it's just navigating through what that entails on both an application and database perspective. We can also assist with the full stack disaster recovery, which we've obviously learned about today in OCI. So we can essentially set this up, configure it, deploy it, manage it, maintain it. If you don't have the in-house skill sets in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or you're not comfortable with implementing and setting up full stack disaster recovery. We can also assist with disaster recovery on-prem. So obviously by ensuring that you've got a solid production and standby configuration in place, whether that's using standard edition or enterprise. So again, Dbvisit or DataGuard, we can make sure that that's implemented correctly and that you're in a very solid and robust state should obviously the worst case scenario happen. And obviously this is to avoid system downtime, add that business continuity, and ensure that you've got a very robust, solid recovery plan in place. And we want to work with you. We want to make sure that this is a journey that we collaborate on and that we run through with you. So another thing I just thought I'd share with you is the approach that Xynomix normally conducts when we engage in and around any types of projects that we can assist with. So there would be the initial qualification stage leading obviously into the proposal. We then have more of a deep dive, more technical based understanding and discussion in and around obviously your environment to then lead into the various design phases to ensure that if there are any issues or areas of concern or things to consider, those are all brought up. We've then got proof of concept. So if you haven't adopted any cloud-based deployments as of yet, or for that matter 23AI, then obviously creating that POC might be a really integral component to ensure that obviously it's going to work for your application and your environment. Build and configure, performance analysis through our own monitor. We then complete the test migration, which would give us an indication of how long the live migration would equate to, and then we would BAU transition into business as normal support. and then it's just a rinse and repeat. So again, we are very agile with the way that we work, so we are adaptable, but we found this process works really well, gives organizations a lot more structure and knowledge of how we can implement things like upgrades, migrations, and then these journey to the cloud strategies. So as I began, obviously we're here to discuss DR as a service. So what essentially is DR as a service? We provide an all-encompassing solution that allows Xynomix to manage the DR as a service on your behalf. So what we do is we install our own bespoke monitoring tool, which allows us to monitor, manage, and maintain both the primary and disaster recovery environments within your estate. As part of this service, what we'll also include is the time that's required in order to build and configure those environments for you, whether that's using Dbvisit for Standard Edition or whether it's using DataGuard for Enterprise Edition. We will take responsibility and ownership for configuring, setting up, and implementing that for you. What we also do as part of the service is provide periodic switchovers, obviously, of your production to standby. Now, there's two main reasons for this. Firstly, to define the process, which obviously is very, very important. So you've got a run book and a solid process to follow, worst case scenario. But the other thing to consider is who else needs to be involved in that switchover or failover scenario. So, for example, the application vendors, your infrastructure teams, your network teams, so on and so forth. So not only have we got a very robust, solid switchover process, but we also know what other teams actually need to be involved in that process too. We then also switch over in the event of a P1. Failover, apologies, in the event of a P1. So again, worst case scenario, if something happened to your production system, as part of the service, we'll then fail you over, obviously, to your standby side, and then also alert you to any issues for both production or standby. And what I mean by this, because of course we can resolve those issues on your behalf, but if you're taking disaster recovery as a service, it might be because you've got your own in-house DBA team to be able to manage it on a day-to-day basis. So we can work really flexibly either way. We can let you implement the changes, or we can take responsibility for that on your behalf. So obviously it just gives you the option. So we've got two really deployment models that we can do, which is the on-prem DR as a service, as well as the cloud, which we'll come on to in a second. So Xynomix works, as I mentioned, directly with Dbvisit. So we can set up, install, configure, implement the Dbvisit standby configuration on the Standard Edition. And of course, that works the same for DataGuard if you are obviously running Enterprise Edition as well. Once then it's installed, we can maintain it. So we can obviously make sure that the updates and the patches are applied to the Dbvisit solution to ensure integrity, to ensure security, to make sure that everything is compliant and that it's working as it should do. And then obviously in combination with our monitor, it means that we can obviously highlight any issues to you. We can obviously take responsibility of the failover, again in a P1 scenario, between the primary and the standby databases, as well as performing these periodic switchovers, just to give you that reassurance that everything obviously is in place, worst case scenario. Then we lead on to disaster recovery in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So obviously Xynomix can assist with implementing the full stack disaster recovery, and Jan obviously has given us a very good overview of what that consists of. If you still don't feel comfortable, or it's not something that you believe you can deal with in-house, then ultimately this is where Xynomix comes into play. We can set this up for you, we can configure it, we can provide you with that ongoing support and assistance, obviously make sure that that DR process is refined, everybody is very clear on what that entails. And again, if you were looking to go down the Dbvisit software route, we can take ownership and responsibility, obviously, for that particular component, as well as DataGuard within the full stack disaster recovery configuration. So in short, just to recap, obviously what I've been through, essentially Xynomix are here to be able to support your journey. So we can assist with the upgrade around the Oracle database version, if you were looking to transition over to 23 AI. If that's in OCI, we can do that now, or obviously as and when it is released for on-prem, we can assist at that point. We can implement a very robust and solid disaster recovery solution, whether that is disaster recovery as a service or just implementing your disaster recovery within your business. We can obviously provide it also for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Again, whether that's, let's say, IaaS, and you're setting it up independently, or whether you want to configure a full stack disaster recovery configuration in OCI, we can support either or. And we also have a plethora of different consultancy services that we can bring to the table too. So I've mentioned that we can resolve issues around the database if you so wish, but also the consultancy would cover things like performance analysis, migrations, journey to the cloud, and things like Oracle estate reviews, where if obviously you're not confident, comfortable, or in a position where you feel that your licenses as they should be, we can give you some guidance and direction to ensure that obviously you are in a very solid position as far as licensing is concerned. We can also provide a fully fledged managed service. So I know I focused on the DR as a service capability, but the full managed service encapsulates, incorporates the DR as a service component too. It just means that we take complete ownership and work in harmony as an extension of your in-house IT team to be able to make sure that your environments are functioning and obviously working as well as possible. What we found with a lot of organizations we currently work with is that their databases are really integral to their business. And if they're down for even an hour, it can result in loss of millions of pounds in revenue due to the fact that they've had an outage on their system. So we're here to be able to support this journey, make sure that obviously if you are looking to implement things like disaster recovery or upgrades and things of that nature, that you are in a very solid position to be able to do so. And ultimately, it obviously avoids loss of revenues and builds in that business continuity too. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you listening to me. And I think, Erin, now we can lead on to questions.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Ed. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time and for your expertise. Really appreciate it as always. So we have had a few questions come in. I can see some of them have already been answered by you guys, but I think let's just go ahead and answer them again. They might be useful for others, but I'll start with the two that have currently not been answered. So number one question for John, is Oracle 23 AI available for download yet?
There is a free version. Oracle Database 23 AI free is available for download. That's obviously not something that you'd want to go production on, and it doesn't have all of the features that I mentioned in, but most of them. 23 AI for on-premise is going to be available on Exadata and ODA this month, I've been told, but don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty confident. We're not sure exactly when 23 AI for general on-premise release is going to be available, but we're expecting it to be sometime this year. But I can't be any more specific than that, unfortunately.
Thanks, John. Another question, does Xynomix support businesses outside of the UK? So over to you, Ed.
Sorry, Erin. Yeah, absolutely. We do indeed. We have a client base that's global. So essentially, yeah, we can absolutely support customers outside the UK.
Right, thank you.
If you do want any information, obviously you can just drop a message through to us. That's not a problem.
Yes, I'll put your contact details up shortly, Ed. Just wanted to get through the questions. So we've actually got a couple more. So I've read that there are license restrictions around Oracle SE on some AMD CPUs. Is that true?
Shall I pick this one up?
Yes, absolutely.
So what the question I may be thinking about here is some of the license changes that happened when the newest Oracle database appliance came out, X10 ODAs, back end of last year. Initially, when they came out, they weren't capable of hosting standard edition, exactly because of that the socket-based license position for standard edition. That was a great fit for the previous generation of Oracle database appliances because they were either single socket or two socket machines that had a great kind of sweet spot for standard edition licensing. The newer ones have AMD EPYC CPUs that that count as multi-socket. So it's not as straightforward to map the single socket-based standard edition licensing onto CPUs that Oracle counts as multiple sockets. Now, fortunately, that got clarified more recently, just a couple of months ago, so that it's like a core count basis. I believe that it's on an 8 cores per standard edition license basis. But obviously this gets complex. And Ed mentioned during his presentation that Xynomix is able to offer advice about license implications for specific hardware and platform choices. So if that's something that any attendees want to drill into, then we'll be happy to take like detailed questions about specific platforms and what the license possibilities are on those, and take those offline later if that's helpful.
Right, thanks, Richard.
Okay.
Another question, does the Xynomix Disaster Recovery as a Service offer apply to cloud environments?
Yeah, absolutely. We can implement it for both, well, basically the multitude of cloud platforms that are available. So whether that is OCI, Azure, AWS, Google, we can facilitate obviously whichever cloud platform customers are looking to move to, as well as on-prem. So the answer to the question is yes, we can accommodate different cloud technologies.
Yeah, it's perhaps worth adding as well that sometimes hybrid DR platforms are pretty useful in this kind of context. So that if you have a production system on-premise, but don't have a second data center to host a DR capability, then sometimes cloud-based DR is a great fit there. So can cut cost for not doubling up on on-premise hardware, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility if you're looking at a future move towards cloud platforms. Then a DR in the cloud that's protecting the availability of an on-premise production system is a good way to start looking at hybrid architectures as part of an overall, like a longer term move to the cloud strategy.
We've also found that for certain customers, because we have implemented this as well, Richard, found it more cost effective because ultimately they've not had to invest in the capital expenditure. They've got that OPEX model for the DR side. So it's more cost effective because you're not having to front the upfront cost, obviously, for the hardware. And as it is just for DR capabilities, you obviously only need to invoke it as and when required. But again, like Richard's alluded to, we can also navigate through the license constraints that may present and understand exactly what that configuration may need to entail.
Question for Jan. So how would you compare Dbvisit with DataGuard? Does it have the same features?
I responded in the chat, and essentially the biggest difference when it comes to, let's say, capabilities would be the data loss. So Standard Edition and Dbvisit Standby, or with Standard Edition and Dbvisit Standby, you would have some data loss, which would be equal to about 5 minutes, let's say, and that's a limitation of the SE2 edition, while DataGuard will really provide you with the zero data loss. And this question comes up a lot in pre-sales calls, and I guess the key factor is to really somehow realize that the zero data loss has a price point, and you really need to think carefully whether you really require zero data loss or not. 5 minutes with Standard Edition on Dbvisit is nothing, I would say, dramatic. A lot of customers run with such, let's say, feature risk or property, let's say. But there are some customers who will simply say, okay, this is not for us because 1 minute data loss is critical for us. But again, this zero data loss has a price point. And I would say the second biggest difference is that the Dbvisit and Standard Edition would, well, the key benefit of using our product is the very easy GUI, which we bundle together with our product, the Deb Server UI, which gives you really, I would say, straightforward management access to your DR database. You can easily create standby database, perform switchover, failover. You don't even have to see command line. And the whole deployment is much easier than with DataGuard, which takes some time and experience to set up.
Right, thanks, Jan. I'll just quickly share my slides one more time. Can you see them all right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay,
Yes.
great. Cool. So just thank you
Yeah.
again to our speakers. And yeah, as for a Q&A, if you have any more questions, anyone, please leave them in the chat. Appreciate we're on the dot at the moment with timing. And if you can think of any other questions that, perhaps later on you have more questions for our speakers, their contact details are here. And this will be shared with you after the webinar as well. So yeah, as Ed said, if you're looking for, disaster recovery support or with managed services, or if you have any questions in general, you can contact him. So his email is here. Another few options is you can head over to the contact page on the Xynomix website, or there's also the contact phone number. So all of these details will be sent to you after the webinar. All right, fantastic. I think that is it. Thank you very much all. Really appreciate your time. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining our session today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank you.